guys, and welcome back to the Saints View, the channel for Southampton content, but today not Southampton content. Once again, we're going to go for some Premier League content today because the last video, well, went pretty well actually. So in this video, as you can suggest by the title, we're going to be having a look at each Premier League side for the 19-20 campaign and take a look at one position that I believe they need to strengthen if they are to do well and succeed in the upcoming Premier League campaign. But before we get into it, first a disclaimer: if you're offended because I've said something completely off the cuff about your team, please don't get offended. Just tell me why I'm wrong in the comment section below and your opinion as to which position that obviously I got wrong, where you think your side should strengthen. But you know, I've supported Southampton. We've been in the Premier League for 7 years now. I think I've got a good idea of, well, the Premier League, how it works and sort of how to succeed, I guess, depending on what category of team you sort of fall into. And before we really do get into it, please go and subscribe if you have not yet already. We're looking to get to 500 subscribers by the end of the month and of course 1,000 in the near future. The sooner you subscribe, the sooner we'll get there, and it'd be much appreciated if you could do that. Also, go check out our socials as well for some exclusive stuff on there. And yeah, let's actually get into this video now. Now, like I said, I'm going to start off in alphabetical order, meaning that we start with Arsenal. And it's just the one position where I give my opinion for strengthening in this video, where Arsenal probably need a whole new team. Jokes aside, of course, we're not going to talk about their Europa League final. We're just going to look analytically, and it's pretty obvious where they need to strengthen. It's got to be centre-back. Now, I like Socrates, but that's the only centre-back of theirs that I like. Koscielny sometimes, but it looks like he might be off. Well, Mustafi. But, you know, obviously the attack, I think they've got sorted and scored a lot of goals last season, but they let way too many in. I think it was over 50 in the Premier League for a top 6 side looking to finish in the top 4. It's really not good enough, and they were very, very close to finishing in the top 4 as well, may I add, with about 50 goals conceded, which sort of is crazy. Sort of shows the difference between Man City and Liverpool and sort of the rest. I guess it's almost as if there's a whole nother league just with those two sides at the moment. And I'm not going to talk about individual names where players that I think they should be scouting. They've clearly got scouting targets for that position. You see the players that they're linked with. They are looking to improve the defence. I mean, it'd be absolutely idiotic if they didn't. The away form was a real issue as well. So they really do need to find not even just a centre-back, but a leader, a presence on and off the pitch, especially on the pitch where they do seem to sort of struggle as soon as they've conceded one goal. So for Arsenal, they need to look at buying a centre-back and one that sort of is long-term as well, because it's been a real problem pretty much over the last good handful of seasons where defence has been the real issue. Now, second up is newly promoted Aston Villa, fresh from their playoff success. And for me, I think they need to be looking at a striker. It's pretty bog standard nowadays. When you come up from the Championship, you need the goals and you need that real magic player who can get the goals for you, that you can rely on to sort of keep you in the division. And that's all Aston Villa should be looking at for this season, staying in the division, and then they'll sort of lay the foundations down, so hopefully they can build and maybe even get close to the club that they used to be and really should be, given the scale and sort of history of Aston Villa. But Tammy Abraham, their top goal scorer in the Championship last season, very prolific in the second division. He will not be there next season unless they are able to lure him on another loan deal from Chelsea or buy him from the Blues. And with their transfer ban, it doesn't look likely that they'll be able to lure Abraham in. So it's vital that they find a goal scorer who's proven in the Premier League, who knows how to put the ball in the back of the net from any sort of position. And if they can find a striker who gets them 10-15 goals, I think they'll be fine. I think everywhere else looks okay for now. Obviously, Aston Villa fans, let me know if striker really is the main position you need to strengthen. But for me, for promoted sides, especially ones with a lot of Championship level players, they do need to find the goal scorer that they can rely upon. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to stay in the league. Now on to Bournemouth. This is a strange position, but I'm going with goalkeeper. It's been pretty evident this season, and maybe you could argue last as well, that goalkeeper has been a real issue. Signing Asmir Begovic just hasn't worked out. He's been benched and come back into the side too many times with Eddie Howe. Artur Boruc obviously coming in as a replacement, but even Boruc didn't really do well enough with his chances, I guess, for Bournemouth. And it even led to Eddie Howe giving Mark Travis a couple of games. 19 years of age, did very well on his debut, got a clean sheet at home to Spurs. So we'll see whether he's given the nod as first choice keeper. But they've also been linked with Bartek Dragowski, who obviously we are linked with, and we did a video on a couple of days ago. I think that'd be a very good signing for them, actually. A young goalkeeper who's very prolific and is one for the future, definitely. So for me, they need to find someone who's a presence at the back and in between the sticks, because they've let in too many stupid goals through goalkeeping errors this season. As I said at the beginning of the video, like, I'm not an expert on every single Premier League club, to the extent that I had to go ask a couple of mates for different teams. And the first one was Brighton. I had to go ask my mate Josh, who's a vlogger for Brighton, and I'll put his link in the description below. You probably know him, you know, he doesn't need me to plug him. But he said that they need a right back. With Bruno gone, obviously I think he retired, didn't he? They need to strengthen their position naturally, but they were defensively very, very poor towards the end of the season, and they didn't score goals. The worst mixture, and that's why they were so close to going down come the end of the season, and in my opinion quite lucky. If they can find a right back who's defensively sound but also isn't shy to put a good ball into the box, then I think they'll be fine. Glenn Murray probably has another season in him. Aerial threat, he's a very good finisher in the box despite his age. I think if they can find someone who can cross then and could put a good ball in, they'll have the sort of firepower, hopefully, to put it in the back of the net. As well as that, they need to make sure that they're still defensively sound at the back. Now going on to Burnley, who didn't have the best of seasons last year. Obviously, compared to the previous season, I think any season probably would have looked bad if they'd finished in the bottom half. They were in a relegation scrap for the majority and ended up finishing 15th. For me, this is one where I wasn't really too sure either, but as a sort of outside shot, I've gone with a winger. It doesn't seem like they put too many balls in the box. Now, that's because I don't watch a lot of Burnley, so please, if I'm wrong, do let me know and suggest why. Don't be mean, but just calmly, collectively say why I'm wrong. They've got the strikers. I think Wood and Barnes is a good partnership, or when they're not playing together, one can come off the bench and make an impact. I think they're two very good strikers for a mid-table Premier League team. But then it doesn't seem like the creativity's there. Sometimes they're not putting the balls in the box at the right time. So I think if they can go look at a winger, then maybe they'll be able to put a few more balls in and score just that many few more goals when they've got the poachers like Woods and Barnes in the box. Now on to Chelsea. Now with this transfer ban, obviously we don't know if what I'm going to say is completely irrelevant. It looks like they're going to try and appeal it, so I'll just go for it. But yeah, like I say, it might be irrelevant in the end. For Chelsea, I've gone with the striker. Now Higuain has obviously gone because it's the end of his loan spell. Didn't really make an impact anyway. And obviously Hazard's gone as well, so goals and assists are pretty much out the window as well. And yes, they did bring in Christian Pulisic, was a smart move. I think he could be good for them. Obviously nowhere near Hazard's level yet. He could be, don't get me wrong, he's very young still. But in terms of an old-fashioned sort of main presence at the front, a centre forward, they don't really have anyone. Giroud getting on a bit now. Premier League goal scorer, I'm not sure. Yes, he was the top scorer in the Europa League, but that's the Europa League. They've got a Champions League campaign to deal with as well. I do think they're missing a real sort of identity in terms of their centre forward position. You know, Diego Costa, he wasn't there for too long, but he made a real impact and had a real presence when every team was defending against him. And I think they need that again, a real quality centre forward. Now, like Brighton, I wasn't too sure on this one, so I had to go ask Harvey from 90 Min and Red and Blue site YT. I'll leave the link for his channel in the description below. He's a Crystal Palace fan, and he told me that, like Chelsea, they need a striker. They've lost Batshuayi, who was on loan. His loan spell has ended. Made a very good impact, I thought, and was a very shrewd signing by the Eagles. And if they could bring him in again from Chelsea, that'd be a really good move. But he will cost a lot, I believe. Probably going to be looking around 30-40 million pounds. They've got the goals in Zaha, but obviously if he's injured, or obviously God forbid for Palace, he's moved on. Benteke just hasn't worked out really. His first season was okay, but the last two have been no short of abysmal. I can't really explain how poor a finisher he is, and I don't see him on a weekly basis, so it must be quite frustrating for the Palace fans. So if they could bring someone in who can get them sort of 15 goals, I guess, in the season, that'd be a very good buy for them. And I think they've got the money to do it as well, so hopefully they can get a goal scorer. Now moving on to Everton, I've gone with a centre midfielder. Now they've lost Andre Gomez with his loan spell. Everyone's losing their loan players. And I think this season they've done pretty well. You know, they were in a bit of a sticky patch the season before when they had to sack Koeman, and obviously Allardyce didn't really work out defensive-minded football. But they've got goals now. Richarlison has been very good. And even at the back, I think they've been quite defensively sound. Digne, I've been very impressed with. So now I think they just need a bit more creativity in the middle of the park, and someone who can do pretty much both jobs, defend and attack, which Gomez was good at, and they may even go back in for Gomez. He doesn't want the move to West Ham, so Everton are really in the driving seat if they are to pursue a permanent deal for him. But yeah, it just seems like if they can add that little extra spark in the middle of the park, that's a bar, then I think they'll be a very good side, and again competing for top 7 and maybe even the top 6 if one of the big 6, I guess that's what we're calling them, drops off a little bit. Now, like Everton, I think the next team should go for a midfielder, and that is Leicester. They too have lost a lone player, and that is Yuri Tielemans. Belgium has been linked with a number of other Premier League sides, but Leicester do want to bring him back, it seems, and if they do so, then he'll be the ideal player. Now, like with Palace and Brighton, this is another one where I had to ask a mate, ask True Fox, go subscribe to him, put his link in the description below. He doesn't really need my plug, but there we go. And yeah, he said they need the midfielder. That hole Tielemans' left needs to be filled. I guess box-to-box midfielder who can break up the play and also set off an attack. And obviously, ideally for them, it'd be Tielemans. He's played with the team, he knows the players, he knows the manager. Fantastic for them in the second half of the season, so if they can bring him back in, that'd be really good for them. I think the fee does sound quite high, so I'm not too sure whether they will end up getting him. But yeah, if they can get someone who adds a little bit of creativity to the side, but also is solid in the middle of the park, then I think they'll have a very good player on their hands and a good chance of getting that 7th spot. Now next on to Liverpool, which is a very difficult job to work out where they need to strengthen. But for me, I've gone with a centre attacking midfielder, someone who is just behind the forward 3 of Salah, Firmino and Mane. Now they lost Coutinho, who sometimes did play on the wing and has been playing on the wing for Barca when he's played, but he also played in that sort of central role, in the hole, I think a lot of people call it, where it's just behind the front 3 and has that little bit extra bit of creativity, the forward passes, the through balls, also can break up the play at times, you know, tracking back and score from outside of the box. I think that's the sort of player they are missing. Obviously heavily linked with Fekir last summer, and they might even go back in for him. I think that's the sort of player they need to be looking at. Someone who can just sit behind, because I think Wijnaldum had a good season, he played around there. I'm not convinced that he's Premier League winner quality starting every single week, adding a little bit of extra attacking spice that the Liverpool side need, maybe to get that 1 or 2 extra points to win them the league. And on to their rivals for the Premier League title, it seems, again this season, that is Manchester City. I put them down in needing to sign a centre-back. And that's not because they were defensively poor last season, that's mainly because they've lost Vincent Kompany, and in doing so they've lost a massive presence on and off the pitch and a leader. Who the new captain will be, I'm not too sure. Might be David Silva. I don't know if the club have confirmed that yet or not. But Laporte was very good last season. Stones, in and out. I think for Man City's been good, but obviously that mistake for England proves that he's not near the level of what they could get in their centre-back department. Having said that, it could be argued that it was the Pickford and all the other players' fault. We won't get into the England game, but I do think they need a centre-back to replace Kompany, whether that's a backup or first choice starter, and it's someone who's a leader on the pitch. You know, De Ligt from Ajax has been quite heavily linked with them, and Man United in fact, and he clearly fits the mould. Big presence, old head on young shoulders. I really think that'd be a superb signing for them. Obviously he's a very, very good defender already. If they can get that leader as well as defensive superstar, I think they'll be within a real good shout to win the league for a 3rd season in a row. Now next, their City rivals, Man United, and where to start really. For me, there's a lot of problems, like Arsenal, a lot of problems at Man United, probably more so than Arsenal, but with one position in mind, I've gone with a midfielder. Now that's only because they may lose Pogba, and some of their midfield performances have been shocking. They give the ball away way too easily. Matic is a suspect for that, and Pogba didn't have too many good performances come the end of the season. A lot of his goals were from penalties, and I can't stand that run up. So if they can find someone who is defensively sound but also can start the attacks, add a bit of creativity, get a couple of assists and score goals as well, I do think they'll be within a chance of maybe not even fighting for the top 4, but securing that top 6 place, because I do think this season it's in jeopardy. There are teams near them that are strengthening, you know, Leicester, Everton, maybe even Newcastle with this takeover. I do think they need really to strengthen heavily if they are to secure not just the top 4 but top 6 really. And going on to that team I just mentioned, Newcastle United, how much they spend very much depends on the new owners. It looks like they are coming in, and how much they'll give, we're not too sure, but it does look to be a decent amount, and that's very good to see a big club like Newcastle finally getting the funds at their disposal. But for me, I've gone with a full-back, and that's because when you've got Yedlin and Dummett, it sort of screams improvement needed to me. Now don't get me wrong, Dummett's probably a very good player, I'm not too sure about Yedlin, but yeah, it seems like a clear position. I think they've got the striker nailed on with Perez, still very good. Whether he goes or not, I'm not too sure. But assuming they've still got the same team, obviously they brought in Almiron, who was very good. They do need to get Rondon back, and it does look like they could do that with the release clause in his contract. So yeah, I think if they can find someone who puts crosses in, but is also defensively sound, like with the Brighton situation, you know, someone who does both, the modern fullback really, who can produce goals but also sort of cut out the amount that they concede at the back, then I think they'll be onto a real winner and very much on course for a top half finish. Now going on to the winners of the Championship last season, newly promoted Norwich City, and I've said they need to strengthen in the centre-back department. They've got the goals, it seems, finally for them in the Premier League. They've never really had a real quality Premier League striker. Hopefully Timu Pukki can provide the goals like he did in the Championship last season, but it doesn't look like defensively they're all there for the Premier League. Apparently they conceded a lot of goals from set pieces last year despite winning the league, and so they need a big figure at the back. I think Tim Klose might be off, and I'm not too sure how good Christoph Zimmermann is, so it does look like they should get a Premier League quality centre-back, one who's also experienced the Premier League. Off the top of my head, maybe someone like Scott Dan. Like I said, I don't really want to go into individual names with who each club should buy, but I think they do need a big presence at the back who will keep out the goals, because if they can score them, that's great, but they won't step if they can't keep them out. And now on to the final promoted side, Sheffield United. And I've said, like Aston Villa, they need to look at a striker. Goals are the most important thing in football, and if you can score them, you're in a course to staying up in the league. And they do need a goal scorer. Obviously, I'll say Billy Sharp could get 20 goals this season because sentimental value with obviously him playing at Southampton and scoring that goal against Pompey, but he's really not going to cut it in the Premier League, I don't think, unfortunately. Maybe get 5 goals, but I don't think it'll be much more. I do think they need to look for a proven Premier League striker who can get them 10, maybe even 15 goals. It's very difficult to find, but when you do find that player, you've got a very good chance of staying up. I'm not sure what their defence looks like at the moment, it has to be said, but at the moment it looks like they've got a Championship level squad, because let's be honest, they did overachieve last season. Fantastic job from Chris Wilder. So now if they can sort of dip their toes into the transfer market, bring in the striker that they need to score the goals to keep them up, then I think they will have a good chance of staying in the Premier League. Now nearly coming to the end, we've hit my club, so finally, and a bit of expertise from me. Now there are a lot of positions that I could say we need to strengthen in because it wasn't the best season, and we're very lucky with the manager we've got. Otherwise I think we would be down right now. But to pick out one position, and I think it pretty much is the key position we need to look to strengthen in, is centre back. Now we've already strengthened in the winger position. It looks like Moussa Chinepa will be coming to Southampton. The club need to announce that in the next few days. But defensively, we were all over the shop last season. We conceded more goals in the Premier League than we did the year before. I mean, honestly, it's really not been good enough at the back. I think this season we have been able to score goals for the first time in a few years since really Koeman left. Goals have been a real problem, or not scoring them. And now we've got the opposite problem. We can't keep them out. Vestergaard had a rocky start at the beginning of his campaign, came out of the side, then brought back in by Mark Hughes at the end of his tenure, and then pretty much was then ever present in the Southampton defence. I do think he's improved massively and will be a big player for us next season, but Jan Bednarek's clearly our best centre-back, so if we bring one in, they'll be replacing Vestergaard. Now I don't even think it will be a massive drama if our first choice pairing is Vestergaard and Bednarek come the start of the season, but we definitely need to add in that position because there were too many times where a centre-back was injured and we were playing with 3. There were just too few options of real quality. Jack Stevens, nowhere near good enough. Yoshida good at times, but still the 3rd best out of the 3. So if we can strengthen that position, I guess it'll be to replace Vestergaard. If not, then someone to back up, because when Vestergaard was injured at the end of the season, we clearly missed him, and I think that went under the radar a bit for us. Once we sort of tighten up the defence, I do think we'll be on to a winner and have a really good season, because with Redmond obviously fit and firing, Ward-Prowse doing well again, Ings hopefully keeps himself fit. Obviously it depends whether we bring a striker in or not. I think we'll have the goals in us, and if we can keep them out, then we will be on course for hopefully a top 10 finish. Next, on to Spurs, and I've gone with a centre attacking mid. Just like Liverpool, I think they're lacking sort of behind the striker, especially if Eriksen is to go, and it does look like he will go. They need that little bit of extra spark in the creativity department just to get them maybe that extra 10 goals throughout the season, or maybe find the winning goal where they're drawing a game. Just that extra little bit of quality. It'll be difficult to find that, obviously, you know, it's quite a rare position, but if they do find it, they'll be on to a winner. But it's pretty bog standard. They had a bit more creativity and a few more assists, replace Eriksen. I think they'll be once again in the top 4 next season. Moving on to Watford, and I think it's pretty obvious from Robin HD's tweets, they need a centre-back. Craig Cathcart, I mean, we can talk about Shane Long, he knows all about Craig Cathcart. So, yeah, for them, I think they were a little bit disappointing come the end of the season. On course for Europe, but poor defensive performances just didn't really help them. I think they got the goalkeeper position nailed on with Foster. And so if they had another centre-back, maybe even 2, then, you know, they secure the defence up a bit. They've got the goals in them, and I do think they'll be on course again for fighting for 7th, or at least the top half. Penultimate side now, thank you for staying with me if you are still here. If why, I'm not too sure, but let's move on now to West Ham. And I've gone with a striker. Now, Arnautovic could go. It looked like in January he was going to go, then he signed a contract. It was all very strange. But they still lack the 20 goal this season striker. Chicharito, you know, was in and out of the side last year, and I do think they need the sort of prolific centre forward to get them those 20 goals, because they're still waiting to get back into Europe. And I think if they can find a real quality goal scorer, then they will be on course for finishing 7th. Creativity wise, they're fine. I think Anderson provides a lot of goals and assists. He wasn't quite disappointing at the end of the season, sort of the whole of the second half really. But if they don't necessarily just rely on him and a couple of the other attacking players, then I do think that West Ham, like I just said, will be fighting for 7th. Now finally, we're on to Wolves. Now it's very difficult to suggest a position where they need to strengthen, because they were so good last season, but I've gone with centre-back. There were times where they didn't really show up, and defensively they weren't great. You know, they had to play Ryan Bennett a couple of times, which isn't great. Willy Boly is one that I think is who I like. So bringing in someone alongside him, I think they'll have another very good season. Fighting for 7th, not too sure. It depends who they bring in, but I think they've got the goals. They don't really need to look at a striker when they've got Jimenez. So if they sort of cut out maybe 10 goals of what they conceded last season, then they'll definitely be sort of on course to getting a very similar finish and having a very similar campaign in terms of the success that they can achieve. Now that is it for the video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, especially if you stayed with us through the whole way. Let us know what you think on where each team needs to strengthen, especially let us know if you're a supporter of another side. Give us your opinion. Was I wrong? Was I right? Was I near thereabouts? One position that your team should strengthen in throughout the summer. Go subscribe to The Saints View if you have not yet already. Follow us on our socials. Turn notifications on so you don't miss any of this content throughout the summer. And we will see you in the next video.